Wisconsin Badgers head coach Mark Johnson joins us. I remember going to a Badgers Gophers men's hockey game in the early 80s, and a fight broke out on the ice during warm-ups. Now that's a rivalry. What's the status of the rivalry between Wisconsin and Minnesota in women's hockey these days?
Well, I think, since I've been in it, now it's almost a little over 20 years, both sets of teams, both universities have put together real good products. And so when I first started, Natalie's now an assistant coach for Minnesota, and, with her and Chrissy Wendell and a couple other Olympic players in that time, I mean, it was nerve-wracking if you're coaching against them because they were such a good team, very successful, wonderful players, and we've been able to build our program up to now the point where we've been able to compete, and we sort of have ebbs and flows with the rivalry. You'll go 2 or 3 years where you do real well against them, and then they'll go 2 or 3 years and do real well against you, and having regular season games that are really exciting, but more important, I think what builds a rivalry is the playoffs, whether within our WCHA or some of the quarterfinal games we've played against each other, or national championship games, and so you build that over time. It's become a real good rivalry, and the people that are benefited by it are the fans. And so we were just up here a couple of weeks ago, and they had 2 of their biggest crowds ever, and great games, very entertaining. Both teams with good players, and they're playing at a real high level. So that's what ends up being a rivalry, and now we've been doing it for over 20 years.
Your season was cruising along, and all of a sudden this 5-game losing streak comes out of nowhere, it seems. How do you think your team handled that, how they got through it? And it seems like they're back on track.
Well, I think, part of any team, you want to be playing your best hockey, in late February and early March, because that's when, if you don't win, your season's over. And so, yeah, we did go through this stretch. We had these 6 games. We ended up having to go out to Quinnipiac for 2. We were home against Duluth for 2, and then we go into Ohio State. So 4 of those 6 games are on the road, and as you look back on it, and for a young player, they're in the moment. They don't look at it from a 10,000 view like we do as coaches. And so, the first game in Quinnipiac, we ended up winning. The second game we probably played better, but we ended up losing. And then the 2 games against Duluth, the first one we played very well. We had a lot of chances, and their goaltender, who's our league top goaltender, just her award came out today, and so she beat us. And so you run into that, and then again we go to Ohio State for the next 2, and the first one goes into overtime, and they end up scoring with about 30 seconds to go in overtime. So we leave the rink feeling bad about ourselves, and they leave all excited. And of those 6 games, to answer your question, the 6th one was the one we probably didn't play as well we're capable of. And we ended up, they ended up beating, I think it was 5-1 or 5-0. And so at the end of the day, as a team, if you go through adversity, how do you go through that? And one of the things that that challenged ourselves is how would you go through that? And so we got our feet organized. We corrected some things, and then we had this other stretch where we had to come up here and play 2 games. And then we had Ohio State to finish up the season at home. So we went up here in a shootout, and then we win the next night, and then we go against Ohio State, and we win in overtime, and the next night we end up losing the game in the last 2 or 3 minutes. They score a couple late goals. So to me, that's part of the a season where you have these good weekends, bad weekends. If things don't go well, figure it out, come back on Monday, and what do we need to do to get better? And I think, from a coach, and you've been around for a little bit, I don't know if that's good or bad, but, you learn that, one weekend isn't going to make or break your season. And certainly that stretch gave us an opportunity to, do some reflection, make a couple adjustments with what we're trying to do, and then try to push forward. And if you're able to push forward, by the end, you should be able to become better as a group. Some teams don't come through that and become better, but I think any team that's had success at the end has had adversity during their season. It might come early, it might come in the middle, it might come late, but having that adversity helps you become who you're capable of becoming. I don't think if you don't go through adversity, you become a strongest team. So you have to embrace it, and you can't get negative, you can't be a naysayer, which in our world today is much easier said than done. So you got to take that outside noise that's coming into you and just eliminate it. And it's like the people in the locker room, the coaching staff, those are the people that are going to correct it. And we've corrected it, and we're in a pretty good place right now.
That's Mark Johnson. Thanks, and play well this week.
Thank you. We've tried.